what we're experiencing now is unprecedented in my life.
It's Tuesday night, August 29th, 2017. Welcome to another Out the Coop Extra. I'm Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press, and in addition to our weekly Out the Coop podcast, we'll be bringing you interviews and special reports as we continue to expand our media empire. That's right. Well, tonight we're bringing you the first ever Out the Coop Extra interview by one of our contributing writers, Seth Goldstein. Seth is also our awesome tech guy that has more freaking energy than you can imagine and keeps Raging Chicken up and running. Today, Seth is going to be interviewing Ben Yagoda, writer and journalism professor at the University of Delaware. Ben Yagoda was also Seth's professor when Seth was at the University of Delaware. And Seth talks to Yagoda about his perspective on the Trump presidency and the role of journalism and the journalist during this unprecedented political era. Well, if you like this podcast and all the pull no punches progressive media we do at Raging Chicken Press, consider becoming a member of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to ragingchickenpress.org and click on the support and membership tab. Click become a member and you're on your way. Not ready to become a member yet? Look, no problem. You can make a one-time donation by clicking donate. We need you, the progressive community, to help us deepen pull no punches progressive media that will hold power accountable. And right now, as a reminder for all our regular listeners, we are running our back-to-school special. So if you become a member of Raging Chicken Press at the $10 a month level, we will send you your choice of either Mark Bray's just-published book, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, or our exclusive Raging Chicken Stay Woke coffee mug. And if you join at the $20 a month level, hey man, we'll send you both, right? And both levels there, the $10 a month level and the $20 a month level also comes with some Raging Chicken swag that we'd love to send out your way too as well. Again, simply go to ragingchickenpress.org and look for the support and membership tab. Click become a member and you'll be supporting homegrown progressive media. And just as a reminder, before I let you check out Seth's interview with Ben Yagoda, Out the Coop is moving back to Friday beginning this week. So Sean and I will be back on Friday talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. So without further ado, I leave you to Seth Goldstein talking to Ben Yagoda. Talk to you soon, folks. See ya.
Hello and welcome to the Raging Chicken Out the Coop Extra. This is Seth Goldstein from Raging Chicken Press, and today I am honored to have the great Ben Yagoda, journalist extraordinaire, a professor of journalism at the University of Delaware, where I went to school. He was one of my professors, and he is a very prolific writer and author about the English language. He's written for The New Leader, The New York Times, Newsweek, and Rolling Stone. He's published a number of books, which include About Our Town, The New Yorker, and The World It Made, as well as a biography on Will Rogers. One of my favorites is How Not to Write Bad, the most common writing problems and the best ways to avoid them. Great book, especially if you're a English language person who likes to get to the nitty-gritty of things. He wrote the B-side, The Death of Tin Pan Alley, and the rebirth of the Great American Song. How have you been?
I've been great. I was in, I think I probably told you when we had lunch, I was in London for England for a month.
Yeah, I saw pictures. It looked like you had a good time.
Fantastic. Got back like 10 days ago and, ready to move into various projects.
Now, since you're the consummate journalist and you've written for some of these big publications out there, I would love your viewpoint on how the journalists are covering our commander-in-chief.
Right.
And I guess to use a Yiddish word, the mishigas that's going on.
Very good. Very appropriate.
Yeah, I was trying to find the right word. Words escape me half the time with this guy in his cabinet. So I'm trying to find words that are articulate to a point.
Right,
so,
right.
Exactly.
Well, I guess first thing, is the first thing is, and I was just teaching this course on the British press, and part of the British press was how they covered the American press and the comparisons between, how they covered American politics and comparisons between the British press and American press. So we got into a little bit on the American scene. And I told these students that, I don't know when they started being aware of politics or presidents, but what we're experiencing now is unprecedented in my life. There's never been anything like it in many different ways. So, and of course, as you know, one of the issues that people talk about is not to normalize it, that, not to get a sense that this is sort of within the realm of the way things are. It's very unusual and very kind of not normal in a lot of different ways. But in terms of the press, yeah, that is certainly one of them. I have never witnessed, and I'm 63 years old, so I've been around for a while, never witnessed anything remotely resembling the so-called war on the press that Trump used. That's like one of his 2 or 3 go-to red meat for his rally, just kind of stoking them up to a frenzy, horrible and un-American and lying the press is. And I really, as people have said this, I fear that violence will break out because there are, these a couple of hundred reporters there in a pen and sort of unprotected and vulnerable. And it's really, to me, rather scary.
It's terrifying, actually.
It's terrifying. Yeah, it's more than scary. You're absolutely right. And, it seems to work for him. I don't know to what extent he means it or it's a cynical ploy or what, but it really sort of stokes up this base. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, it's also been pointed out that maybe certainly in part because of this, the press is doing better in its goal of being a watchdog and covering those in power than it's been in recent memory. I mean, the press has taken a lot of economic hits over the past couple of decades, like really serious economic hits, and major organizations are struggling. But in terms of the role of covering I'll use a bad word, covering the shit out of this stuff, it's doing great. Places like New York Times and Washington Post, ProPublica, and I just read today that ProPublica was attacked, had a computer hacking attack. And
oh, really?
Just yesterday or maybe today, their systems went down. But again, these organizations that I'm talking about, New York Times, Washington Post, ProPublica, NPR, are actually doing better financially than they have. I mean, Trump keeps talking about the failing New York Times, but every time he attacks it, they seem to get more subscribers. So, to quote Dickens's famous remark, for the press, it's the best of times and the worst of times.
It really is.
It's number one is that it is unprecedented. And I don't mean unprecedented, I mean unprecedented.
Exactly. I'm sitting here looking at this and being pseudo-journalistic, in my endeavors lately, and I'm just flabbergasted. It's very interesting to see that the outside world, outside the U.S., cover the politics, especially the British press, because like the Guardian, though they're pseudo-U.S. now, I see the Guardian as looking out in somewhat. And I find it very interesting. I also find a lot of the left-wing media, like Jacobin, really stepping up, like the alternative media as well. Not all facts, but all media.
Yeah, I have to confess I'm not that up on the alt media, and I kind of view it with a little bit of double-edged sword in that. I'm a big proponent of the so-called mainstream media, in terms of at least having some chance to gain credibility from across a wide or relatively wide political spectrum. one of the things that's been happening is this splinter. So those on the right believe their sources, those on the left believe their sources, and each one is in a bubble and not hearing from each other. So, I certainly applaud anyone who's going out there and getting the truth, but it would be nice if it's nice and it's heartening to the extent that these organizations with a broad base to readership, and Trump, to the contrary, with some respectability, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post, are kind of nailing these stories. That to me is a good thing. And in terms of the British, the Guardian is a liberal paper, and of course over there, the newspapers and organizations have they've been doing a long time what has happened here recently, that is having a political slant and making no bones about it. So the Daily Mail and the Telegraph and the Times are right wing, and the Daily Express, the Guardian and the Mirror are liberal. The BBC and the Financial Times are kind of occupying the middle of the road to the extent there is. But in all the press over there, every part of the spectrum, they cover Trump a lot, and even the conservative press over there seems to cover him as a sort of scary buffoon.
Exactly.
So this thing, and I get the sense that in Europe as well, that's the sense they have, and they kind of looked at us with a look of sympathy, like, oh man, sorry that you've, and they assume that, I guess nicely, that when they meet an American, that person couldn't have supported Trump. Trump supporters don't go to England, but there is a lot of disdain over there for what's going on in Washington now. That's for sure.
So what's your take on journalists having a slant, or journalism having a slant, especially if it's not Fox News, who says fair and balanced, and they clearly aren't? What's your take on, New York Times is kind of liberal, and they kind of don't, the WAPO, the Washington Post is very liberal, and then you got CNN, which is like on the opposite spectrum of Fox News, which is as liberal as you get. But what's your take on clear slant versus hidden slant?
Yeah. Well, it's a really good question, and the hidden slant, that's sort of a philosophical issue that kind of getting to the point. Is it possible to be, fair and balanced? Everybody has a point of view. Is it possible to check your politics at the door? And, I guess it call me old-fashioned, but I sort of think yes. Studies have shown that reporters in their personal views are liberal, but reporters I know, they don't bring that to their coverage. The editorial page, yes, the New York Times has more liberal columnists and has a liberal editorial point of view, but in their news coverage, I don't think that's the case. I think they do a good job of covering it without a slant. Now, one of the things that's happened is that, so here's what happens. Trump comes out there and, let's put it bluntly, he tells lies, okay? And the press had to debate whether to use that word, of course, and for the most, some have decided, it's hard. It traditionally hasn't been used in news coverage, because to say that someone's lying, you don't have to merely show that he or she said something false or incorrect, but you have to say that they deliberately did that. And how do you get into their mind? Well, the New York Times on occasion has looked at certain claims, like, that there were these illegal voters for Hillary, or that Obama, wasn't born in America, or that Trump had a bigger turnout in his inauguration. He said A, they were false, and B, they were proven without a doubt false enough so that he has to be aware of it. So they said if he persisted in saying these things, those are lies. So in any case, whether you use the word or not, Trump states falsehoods, repeatedly states falsehoods, contradicts himself, says one thing, then goes to something else, has, because of the things he said and done, many Republicans, Democrats, people from abroad make statements that are highly critical of him, and say the New York Times reports those things, these falsehoods, these contradictions, quotes those people, and then Trump turns around and says, "You're against me."
Oh yeah.
You know, and that feeds his red meat. The media is against me. The media is slanted. Now, if the Times persists in that, he just says, "See, they keep doing it." So in a way, he's very clever and devious. And I think the Times, which is the organization I'm most familiar with because I read it every day, they've not taken the bait. They have persisted. They've probably bent over backwards to make sure everything is airtight and use language like lie only when it can really be supported. But they just, go out and report the news and let the sparks fall where they may.
Yeah.
And I think they've done a really excellent job. I think that's the case with Washington Post as well. I don't see that as much. I saw today that in the Times that the editor of the Wall Street Journal, in a sort of somewhat chilling maneuver, has criticized his own reporters.
Wow.
For he is charged, and the Times got hold of some internal emails, he supposedly injecting their opinion into the coverage of Trump's actions and rallies. I guess he was saying, just say what he said. But that, of course, is only half the duty of the journalist. You can't just be a stenographer. You have to go ahead and investigate the truth.
It's tough, yeah.
Ground of what the person has said. So yeah, it's tough to report on this guy who is highly, highly problematic, and not veer over the line into editorializing. It can be done, but it's tough to do.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I assume that you're a very big proponent of, if you are slanted in some way, being very forthcoming with it. Like the British are. Like, they're very...
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's forthcoming. I guess in over there,
or
just everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that if you pick up, the Daily Telegraph, it's known as the Tory Graph. You're going the spin from the conservative side. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and we know, so with Fox on the one hand and MSNBC on the other, I wouldn't necessarily label them as equivalent.
Yeah.
But in a broad sense, the one is conservative and the one's liberal, and everybody knows that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They don't label it, but it is known. And I like the old-fashioned idea of trying to check your politics at the door, because if you don't, of course, it's never gonna be okay to fabricate something. Although we've seen that, but it's never okay.
Yeah. I remember vividly our class when I was in journalism school. When I was in class with you at Delaware, and this whole Stephen Glass thing broke. I remember you got very heated about it and said, "Don't you ever do this?"
Okay.
And it was about a week worth of lectures on how not to do this, and that's stuck in my mind. It was, Ben really being at home.
So that's pretty. That kind of thing is pretty rare. But what's a little more insidious is, reported the news in a slanted way, so that you will, leave out something that is newsworthy and significant, but it doesn't fit in with your side. Mm-hmm. A New York Times reporter would never do that, no matter what their political slant would be. And, just to repeat myself, I kind of like that. I like that approach.
The traditional way, absolutely.
Yeah, the traditional way, even though it is a bit of a fiction of being objective. True objectivity may not be, possible, but you can get close. You can approximate it.
You can do your best. Exactly. Yes. Go ahead.
When people, just points that when people have these sort of conspiracy theories with the press, they're all left-wing, they're all right-wing, which is kind of, good on the press for having people on both sides saying that they're the other way. I think you and I know that that's not really true. That a reporter's basically all the reporters I know, their main motivation is to advance their own brand and own career and own standing by finding out scoops and publishing, striking news stories that before everybody else gets it, and not to put forth any political point of view. And that's a kind of check and balance as well. That that institutional valuing of the scoop, no matter where the chips fall, it is turns out to be a good thing.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this.
Fantastic.
But all right, great. I had to reach out to you about this because this is like you said, unprecedented.
All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Don't forget, this Friday, Sean and I will be back for our weekly Out the Coop podcast, where we get into the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. Until then, folks, thanks for tuning in for this special Out the Coop Extra. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. We will see you on Friday. See ya!